Welcome to Night Wanderings, a compilation inspired from nightmares, given to the author, and transformed to pen, paper, and given a voice. Tonight's nightmare was passed down through 3 generations. It traveled far, gathering weight as it rolled into being. Much like the snowy terrain of our story, it might leave you with a chill resistant to the heat of heavy blankets or fire. I, Silas Reynolds, will be your traveling companion this evening. Come wander with me.
You ever play a game of chicken on the water? You know, you all stand on the edge with hot rocks burning parts of your feet like hamburger on a skillet. You turning around miserably back and forth as you jiggle between them. Everyone not quite ready for that bite of the cold, 'cause it ain't ever that warm. I felt like we were all playing that game when Mr. Sykes and his wife went missing. It was a hard winter that year. Wyoming mountains bring more than just cold. Towns crop up everywhere, I suppose, but I've always wondered why we build them so close to these snowy monsters. Don't be fooling yourself. Call it your mountain. Act like it's your best buddy. And take all your cutesy little photos with your dumb ass hanging off of a precipice. It doesn't matter. It ain't your damn mountain. It doesn't love you. Mountains don't love men. They don't care for much of anything but themselves. And they certainly don't give a rat's ass about your social media. They sneak up on you. They take you, and they turn you around when you're not careful. They can get you to see things that ain't even there. Trust me, it isn't your mountain. I knew this fella, and saying I know him is stretching the truth a little bit. Sykes was no Mr. Rogers. Hell, he wasn't even on that street. Sykes was old, ugly, and battle-scarred deeper than his skin. Served in 2 wars, and then wandered away. I guess a mountain can do that at least. Get you away. Might not give you back, though. So Sykes went and got himself tucked up in the mountain. Came down every once in a while for booze and provisions. And then one day this girl shows up. I say girl because I was sure she couldn't be more than 18. She turns up with barely any knowledge on English. I'm not sure where she came from. Then Sykes comes down from the mountain and picks her up. And then my phone blows up. Being the sheriff, I figured that's pretty normal. Caused a bad taste in the whole town's mouth, that girl. Had everyone up my rear to do something about what was going on. Heard a lot about mail order brides and sex trafficking. So I had to go up there. This was before the bad winter hit, mind you. You got that girl in the spring. So I head up the mountain. I got my deputy Danny with me. He doesn't talk much, and that's why he's my deputy. And we get up there to see old Sykes and his new wife. Sykes and the girl were all manners. She had her paperwork and passport. Now, this wasn't a love nest. They weren't in the mind of newlyweds, all sugared up and doe-eyed. But they were okay. Sykes' cabin is much like himself, weathered, rugged, but not wholly uncomfortable. He likes comfort. His clothes may be old, but he purchases solid, long-lasting things, like thick flannels and heavy blankets. The furniture is about the same. I asked my questions, and Sykes politely answered, did I believe they had met in the war years ago? No, I didn't. She wasn't old enough to have met Sykes before now. The papers put her at 25, but her bones were delicate like a bird's. Her eyes took up most of her pale face, and they looked frightened. Not of Sykes, however. She looked scared of me. There were no laws being broken, and the girl wouldn't say she was in duress. She seemed okay. Maybe she'd come from something worse. Maybe she didn't mind shacking up with old Sykes if it meant she could be away from wherever she'd been. And hell, Maybe I tell myself those things in comfort. Maybe I could have done more for her. I looked for black eyes, or that miserable air that hangs over some homes like pairs of ugly curtains. I mean it, though, when I say they seemed fine. So I go back to town and become the new hated man. Funny, Sykes was the one taken up with a young bride, but I'm the one who everyone hated for it. I got moms and grandmas glaring at me and muttering as I go by. One of my younger female officers' face turns blue with suppressed air every time I walk past her desk. My deputy, Danny Ryerson, tells me she's full of piss, vinegar, and gossip at the whole thing. I tried to explain there wasn't much I could do legally. This wasn't a movie. I couldn't just barge in there, guns blazing, and rescue someone that didn't want to be rescued. That's always the problem. People want you to be a knight in shining armor. I get that as a cop, but that feeling gets tainted when you realize there are people out there that don't want your sword and shield act. The law wears you down. It takes all that fantasy imagery and drowns it like a raccoon in a cage stuffed down the river. Pretty soon you're just a lame walking textbook of rules and shit. So, life goes on. People hate you. Well, then winter hits. Like I say, people really shouldn't be living so close to these mountains. It dumped all over us. Now we at the station were running all over the place, trying to take care of the town. People always call the police when they don't know what to do, even if there's no emergency. They call us if their cat went out in the storm and hasn't come back. They call us when they're too snowed in and the plows haven't made it through because, well, they just gotta get to work. They call us if their kids slip on a sidewalk and breaks a tooth. Small town, lots of fun phone time. It was Richie White that was the first one to voice genuine concern. Richie runs the general store. He came directly to the station, which was a feat with the town blanketed in snow like it was. He slides right past our receptionist, Wendy, and she ain't easy to get by. She's built like a female quarterback. She jumped out of her seat to try and catch him. And now I overhear him struggling to tell Danny about Sykes not coming down for provisions. And I got that uncomfortable feeling. The way you feel when your stomach slips down into your bowels like a damned yo-yo. I told you we'd all noticed. Sykes always drew eyes when he crept down here with his little missus. Small town, like I said. We all knew it had been a while. Kids at the water. No one wants to plunge in first. So I called Wendy and asked Richie about what Sykes had been buying lately. Would he have enough to get through the winter? Now, Richie was the color of notebook paper. He says he doesn't think so. He'd had enough for maybe a solid 4 weeks, but it's been 7. And he doesn't need to tell me that part. I knew. I'd been counting too. I kept my eye on Sykes and the girl. Mostly because I did feel responsible for not dragging her away from the old man. They came down every so often, bought things they needed. Sometimes they'd get lunch at that old German place. Amazing crepes. Kind of thing that make it worth living around here. Well, then they'd scurry back on up the mountain. It had been too long. At first, I figured they were snowed in. Lots of us were in the first weeks. Now, Sykes was smart enough to have prepared for that possibility. I was sure they were holed up there riding it out. Then the thaw hit about week 3. It wasn't a deep thaw, but it was enough they could have taken his truck and put the chains on and gotten down here if they really needed. Week 4, we got a whole new mess of snow, and I started to feel uneasy. I tried calling his cabin, but the lines were down. A month without fresh food. I told myself Sykes had a freezer out back. I knew he bought long carrots from Richie and stored them. I tried to comfort myself that he was smart enough to hold them up that long. Then we got to week 7. Another slight thaw had come through that Monday, but no truck creeping down the hill. "You gotta go up there, Sheriff. I got a bad feeling. Plenty of people prepare for bad winters and can hold up a good long time, but Sykes, he doesn't have enough. I've done the math. He needs more food. Has to have more food by now." Sykes hunted. That was my argument, but it didn't get far. Now, who on earth was hunting in this snowstorm? I started to picture Sykes and the girl starving to death. I saw them falling asleep and too weak to build a fire. I saw the girl more often than I imagined Sykes, huddled in the bed and frozen like a block of ice. In my head, her eyes were always open, and they looked downright accusatory. It was time to get up that mountain and make sure they were okay. We have a big snow truck with chains at the station. In Wyoming, in these mountains, that's a must. Now, we're still one of those small towns the world somehow hasn't found yet, but we still have some updated tricks up our sleeves. Danny thought we should bring a couple of others up there in case Sykes and the girl were incapacitated somehow. So 4 of us, Danny, Ann, Randall, and I, well, we are the natural volunteers. The truck is massive, and we had plenty of room to bring some provisions up or bring people back down if needed. Most of us were too sick to our stomachs to talk much. Worry can do that. It plugs up your throat like a cold. We sat there and gripped our seats and our guns, except Danny, who was driving. His knuckles were white on that steering wheel. It's a bit of a ride up to Sykes' place. I didn't blame Randall and Ann for drifting off a bit. Danny and I just watched the roads. He asked me if I was sure there wouldn't be any more snow today. We'd waited for a clearing, you see. You can't get up the mountains when it's dumping. You'd be like one of those old cartoons, huffing and puffing your way up to the top, only to find some jackass with a hammer or a giant snowball to throw you back down. Danny kept ducking his head forward to check that it wasn't going to start dumping on us. He did it so often I finally had to give him that look that said, "Knock it off, will you?" That was about when Randall woke up shouting. Danny hit the brakes hard as Randall goes off about seeing someone in the snow. Danny starts hollering at him as we all try to catch our stomachs, feeling like they flew out the window with the slamming stop of the car. I could tell quickly, though, something wasn't right with Randall. I've known him a long time. His eyes didn't look right, and I felt more of that unease slipping into my belly. I won't lie. In that moment, I wanted us to go back. Randall was screaming that there was someone in the snow, and Danny was barking he'd just been dreaming, but there was no arguing with him. I yelled at both of them to shut the hell up. I got out of the truck. I took a good look around and slammed the door behind me. Snow is so quiet. There's a reason people call it a blanket of snow. It just sort of tucks all the noise in like a mother putting a toddler to bed. It folds over all the little creases until there's nothing. Honestly, it was more peaceful than the damn truck, but I still felt bad. Randall had been yelling he'd seen a guy in a dark green plaid coat. I would have believed he was having a little bit of after effects of sleep had I not seen a coat just like that hanging in Sykes' house. I called out, "Sykes! Sykes! You out here? Anybody out here?" I thought maybe I heard something out there, aside from the muffled talk going on inside the truck. I cocked my head a little and pulled my hat and muffler away from my ears. It was so faint, but it almost sounded like singing or whistling. I called out again, loud as my lungs would allow. Nothing came of it. A moment later, I wasn't sure I'd really heard anything at all. I was thinking maybe my mind made it up. Sometimes noise is just a memory that slips between the cracks and fills the spaces. Danny was cursing in the truck. He rolled down his window to tell me we were still miles from Sykes' cabin. Danny didn't think he could have come down this far. I walked around a bit more, but there was nothing but endless white and that silence. Again, I wanted us to go home. I did not want to take another step up that mountain. But I'm the cop here. I can't let those cowardly feelings win. I spat and got back in the truck to try to calm Randall down. took us another good hour to get the rest of the way up the hill. Sykes' cabin came into view with relief, its brown triangular roof looking like some kind of beacon. As we came in, nothing looked particularly sinister. The place was always a bit dingy. It was the feeling. I felt like my whole body was cold. Like it didn't matter that I was layered up like a Sherpa. All the ice in the air was still slipping through. And that silence, well, it just hung there. We kept pretty quiet. We didn't need anybody to tell us to shut up. Randall was shaking slightly. Ann kept asking him if he was all right and tried to rub his arm reassuringly. He muttered about being car sick. He did look sick. He hadn't looked right since whatever nightmare he'd been having woke him up. I tried to put my hand on his shoulder and look him in the eyes. He wouldn't really look at me. Danny gave me a glance that told me he was feeling uneasy about Randall's state of mind. Okay, boss. I got sick in the car. I'll be okay. Danny threw me another hard stare. Ann offered to sit with him by the truck while we checked the house. She said once Randall was feeling up to it, they could head towards the back of the property and check there. Well, we agreed because we were all itching to be done. Danny was on edge, and I could feel it as we walked up to the dingy porch. There were a couple pair of boots. Did that mean Sykes was inside? I gave a sharp rap on the door, and to our surprise, it creaked open at my touch. It wasn't latched. Shit, if that's not spooky as hell. Shut up. We walked through. I gave another hard knock on the wood and called out to alert Sykes we were there. The bad smell hit us along with a blast of more frigid air. Danny coughed hard at it. I couldn't describe it. Maybe they'd had some food go bad. Now I knew what corpses smell like. Unfortunate knowledge to have in my line of work. This didn't quite have the same odor. It was like a stew turned rotten. My mother used to make broth from turkey bones when I was a kid. One time it got lost in the back of our fridge. Well, when we found it, yeah, this smelled like that. The house wasn't big. The living room was open with a big fireplace, one that looked like it hadn't seen fresh logs in a long time. And the kitchen was tucked into a corner. The kitchen was a real mess. There were 2 large pots in the stove, and something that looked like lard collecting in a bowl. A staircase led off to a loft where I knew Sykes had his bed. Danny went to look in the kitchen, still choking on the smell. I took the stairs. I didn't want to go up. I could still see the girl, lifeless there in bed. I'd never actually seen what Sykes' bed looked like, but the image I tortured my mind with was strong. I started whispering a little prayer in my chest. Each of my heavy boots hit the wooden stairway heavy, like the gong of death ringing out with every step. Empty. Relief hit me like a waterfall, and I felt dizzy. The whole space was deserted. No suspicious lumps in the dirty sheets or rolled in a bundle on the floor. They weren't here. I looked around under the bed, peeked in the small chest of drawers and closet. Nothing. I did feel a slight sickness when I saw the drawer of simple white panties that must have been the girl's. They looked like children's underwear. She was too young for all of this. I had to find her. If Sykes was dead, so be it. But I needed to find that girl. That was about the time we heard Ann scream. Danny shouted, "Boss!" and I heard him tearing for the front yard. I took the steps faster than I should have, and only just escaped falling and breaking my neck as I got down. Danny was through the door before me, but I caught up. I didn't notice the thick white flecks at first. I was just running after Danny. Randall and Ann weren't in the front of the truck anymore. The screams were coming from the side of the cabin. Danny and I rounded the corner, and I couldn't really take in what I was seeing. Randall was on top of Ann. There was something all over him. Looked like thick paint at first. Danny was screaming, running towards him. I followed up with a stitch the size of a baseball in my chest. I don't know exactly what Danny and I yelled at Randall. I couldn't understand. Both Randall and Ann were covered in red. Where was it coming from? Then Randall lowered his head to Ann's neck, and a large gush of crimson blossomed around it. When the copper scent hit my mouth, I realized it was blood. Danny threw himself at Randall, getting him off of Ann. Ann let out a gasp that sounded like she was breathing water. I reached her and saw a large open wound in her throat. I tugged out the scarf I had around my neck, almost strangling myself trying to get it off. I was telling Ann it was going to be okay as I pressed it to her throat. Blood gushed all over my hands like warm oil. I kept talking and trying to stay calm as Randall was wrestled into cuffs by Danny. Shit, he was trying to bite him too. There was a mass of blood over his lips and teeth and something else. Thin strips and strings that I just couldn't bring myself to look at. I felt Ann convulse, and I looked into her eyes. Even as I kept trying to hold all that blood inside of her, she went still. Danny was bellowing to get her to the truck, but when he looked at me, he knew what I knew. It was too late. Danny sat there panting, holding Randall, who was sobbing and laughing. Danny looked how I felt, sick and bewildered. He finally managed to get out that we needed to get to the truck. I agreed because I couldn't think what else to do. She was so small and light, but there was a heaviness down through my arms all the same as I carried her. Danny dragged Randall to his feet and pushed him along after us. I laid Ann across the back seat carefully. She didn't even take up the whole thing. It broke my heart. Danny shoved Randall into the front seat. He had gagged him with his scarf, so whatever noise he made was muffled and broken. Then Danny got in the back, trying not to disturb Ann's body. I got into the front and tried to start the truck. Silence. The key didn't even try and turn over. Just silence. Danny snapped at me to move. It was then that I realized it was snowing. We were getting buried. We were trapped. It didn't make any sense. An hour later, we'd resolved to leave Ann's body in the truck. It seemed the safest or most respectful place for her. We took Randall inside and handcuffed him to a thick beam in Sykes' living room. He wasn't hurt besides a long scratch running the length of his neck and chin. Most of the blood on him was Ann's. Danny could barely look at him, let alone talk to him. He liked Ann. Hell, everyone liked Ann. She'd always loved being a cop. She was petite, but tough, with a great smile. Now, who could ask for more? I tried hard to press Randall about what happened, but all I got were inane mutterings. Had to do it. I'm sorry. So sorry. Had to. When do we go? We go. So sorry. Had to do it. Please, help. That was all I got. Danny and I eventually went back out to look at the truck, but there didn't seem to be anything wrong but maybe a dead battery. That didn't make any sense, of course. The truck was practically new. Danny muttered it must not have been driven enough. We avoided looking in it, frightened to catch a glimpse of Ann's mangled corpse. We went to look for Sykes' truck, but didn't have high hopes. That was good because we couldn't find any damn keys for it once we found it, and the snow was still coming down. Driving would be getting more and more dangerous, and Sykes' vehicle wasn't half as good as ours. You know how to hotwire this thing? Wouldn't make a damn difference. Be better luck hot wiring our own truck. So you know how? No. We decided we should check around the house. Might as well try to find Sykes and the girl. My stomach was a hard knot of frozen bile and what felt like rot. Even if I found the girl, I was sick over the loss of Anne and Randall's apparent mental collapse. Nothing added up. I'd known Randall for 9 years now. He was an okay cop, if not a great one. He wasn't anything fancy, but he did his job, and he had a fair nature. He had a nice wife and 2 kids at home. I was wrong-footed, like someone pulled a rug out from underneath me, and then kept pulling rugs, like there was just one after another. In the back of the house, we found a shed with a freezer and a big old hunting knife. It appeared to be where Sykes stored his meat. There were packages of meat at the bottom, but Richie had been right about veggies or fruit. They had run out of certain foods. Still, Sykes and the girl could have survived on this. They hadn't starved. So where were they? The whole yard and house were empty, and the snow picked up even more. Eventually, we had to check on Randall. He'd been gnawing his fingers off. Danny let out just about every cuss word there is at the sight of Randall. I ran to him and tried to pull his hand away as Danny searched for anything that would help us knock Randall out. Randall tried to bite me as well, and I screamed at Danny that we should have left the gag on. I'd removed it with a sliver of pity and a larger cut of curiosity. I did want to talk to him. I pushed his head away from me with one arm, while shoving his bleeding hand between my thighs with the other. Danny had found a folded rag somewhere and shoved it back into his mouth to keep him from biting either of us. I scrounged up a bedsheet back in the house to wrap his bleeding hands into. He'd lost parts of his forefinger and his middle. We kept him pinned down for I don't even know how long. At some point, he wore himself out and fell asleep. I took the rag out so he wouldn't choke. Danny gave me a look that said he wouldn't care if he did, but didn't argue. Maybe he figured Randall should lose a few more fingers. Once things calmed down, Danny got a first aid kit from the truck. I don't think he tried to be particularly gentle with his comrade's fingers. Take it easy, Danny. I'd rather not. Won't do you any good to make it worse. Bastard isn't even reacting. Wore himself out. He's probably in shock. We never said what we were waiting for after that. We sat exhausted between the sofa and a large rocker. Snow dumped outside the window. I stared at it in exhausted bewilderment. We checked the weather, and we checked and checked. It shouldn't be snowing. I knew if it continued, we could end up stranded on this mountain with a dead cop, a deranged man, and 2 missing persons on our hands. This frustration of having to sit still in the aftermath of chaos, doing nothing, well, I just wanted to get out of there. Danny fell asleep looking like a genuine cowboy, hat slumped over his eyes. I probably looked something like a grandpa nodding off during Jeopardy. I thought it was Randall screaming when I woke up. My eyes popped open just in time to see Danny running out the front door, hollering and yelling about getting Sykes. I jumped off the couch and tried to get situated, but Randall spoke. "Don't follow him, boss. He's seen it. He's seen it now. I'm so sorry. When do we go? Well, when do we go? Please, sorry." I looked at Randall as tears poured down his swollen face. Despite everything, I felt cruel leaving him that way. I tried to tell him it would be all right. We were going to get him help. I knew Wendy would call out a brigade if we weren't back soon. Surely she would send someone. She'd be worried. Randall just blubbered. I told him I'd be right back, and then fled after Danny. I regretted hesitating with Randall the minute my boots hit the icy porch. Danny was gone. It was dark now. Snow during the day is bad enough. Snow at night is worse. Damn the silence. I didn't want it. I wanted to hear Danny shouting for Sykes. I needed something to follow. There was nothing. Just that dead silence. That phrase, dead silent, ate at me. I would have taken any kind of sound then. Wolves, owls, any damn thing. There was nothing. I wanted to shout for Danny, but instead I called out softly like an old lady trying to get her cat back in. I felt like I couldn't break the silence as viciously as I had earlier calling for Sykes. Stupid, I know, but I was in a bad way. Too disoriented from the day so far and the odd broken up sleep. Then I heard it. The whistling. Or a singing noise. I was sure it wasn't in my head this time. Someone was making that noise in the dark, and I felt like it was for me. I pulled my gun and flashlight. I had always kind of wished my belt was more like Batman, full of gadgets. It wasn't. Just had my gun and my flashlight. The beam shook, and I didn't like that. I'm the sheriff. I need to be stronger. I'm up in years, but that shouldn't mean a damn thing. The sad truth was, however, that being a sheriff doesn't mean you've ever been in anything real. Not like this. I was sheriff because I did my time as a cop, and I wasn't stupid. Not because I'd been particularly good at anything. I gathered the sound. It felt like it was coming from the back of the cabin. Could that be Danny? Why the hell would he be whistling? Or was it Sykes? Was all of this Sykes? Had he gone crazy in the cold and trapped the girl somewhere? Was he playing with all of us? But how could he have caused Randall to go mad and kill a friend and fellow officer? I told my brain to stop asking questions and move instead. I made my way slowly to the back. The shed was still empty, though the sight of the meat freezer chilled me. For some reason, it made me think of the filthy, smelly kitchen. I moved past it towards the tree line. All the while, that sound grew. Maybe they were words, but they didn't sound English. Some of it was definitely whistling. Hey, who's out there? Show yourself. I finally managed to get some orders out. The whistling stopped. I turned from side to side at the edge of the trees. I wasn't stupid enough to get lured into a forest in the dark, but the beam of my flashlight caught something. Something green. There was something laying half covered in the snow. It was about a foot from where I was standing. I hesitated again. I didn't want to get in those trees, but I recognized that green sleeve. I kept my gun at chest level and worked my way between the branches and odd footholds. Snow covered most of Sykes' body. He'd clearly frozen to death, sitting against the tree trunk. His head was slumped forward, and his tongue appeared to be black, swollen, hanging from his mouth. There was an odd word carved just above his head. It read, Wendigo. In my mind, I heard Randall saying over and over, "When do we go?" It was an old myth, a Native American legend about a monster that lived in the woods. Memories flooded my brain, campfires with my dad, grandfather, and friends. The Wendigo stories always happened in winter, and they always terrified me. The part I remembered most was what he'd tell us right before bed on those late-night campouts. He always said, never be the first to open your eyes in the morning. Don't open them. Listen with your ears. Make sure someone else is up before you, but don't you open your eyes. That's who will see him first. The first one that wakes up. I used to huddle in my sleeping bag long after I was awake with my eyes shut tight. I'd wait until I heard somebody else moving around to make sure I wasn't the first one up. but it was just a campfire story. That's all it was. It didn't mean anything. I looked down at Sykes' frozen body. I used my flashlight to tilt his head back slightly. I jumped about a foot in alarm to find what I thought was his tongue was actually a snake. I let out a pretty big shout as I jumped. My brain sort of jammed. The snake was a bluish black with a lighter underbelly. A black racer snake. How the hell did one end up halfway down Sykes' throat? Was he alive when this happened? Or did the snake crawl in and get stuck after he was already dead? I swallowed some of my own sour bile and tried to breathe easier. I got closer. I saw scratches on the snake. I dusted snow off Sykes' arms and found his hands bloody with bits of scales wedged down deep in the nail bed. He'd been alive when he fought this creature. Did he try to eat the snake? Or had he fallen asleep out here and it crawled in to keep warm? Black racers hibernated, but usually with other snakes. I got a vision of the thing crawling up Sykes' weak belly and slithering into his mouth. Was it the scales? Trying to pull the snake out would have ruined Sykes' throat. The scales would have been going the wrong way. Easy in, but not out. My head swam. I was drowning. I got unsteadily to my feet. I didn't know how to mark the spot, but it wasn't too far in. I started praying that Wendy had already sent people in after us. Nothing made sense. I needed to find Danny. Maybe I'd try to hotwire Sykes' truck. Did I know how to do that? Hell no. But I wanted off the mountain and the rest of my boys off too. My voice was stronger as I yelled for Danny. It felt like the snow was working against me. Like it was trying to smother my calls from my deputy. I figured I should head back to the cabin, try again to find some keys for Sykes' truck. Since I only wanted to attempt to wire it if I had no other option. I thought maybe I caught the song again, but I ignored it as I hustled back to the front door. At the entrance, I paused. I heard a strange noise. It was a hard thwacking sound, like someone chopping wood. Then there was this spilled water noise, like someone upsetting a tall glass. Terrified to see what Randall was doing to himself now, I rushed through the door. Danny stood in the kitchen with his huge hunting knife that we'd seen in the shed. He was chopping some kind of meat that bled profusely with each hack. His arms and chest were covered in blood. Randall was missing. Danny was whistling. I said his name quietly. "Hey, boss. Gotta get this stew going." I just looked at him. Something was wrong with his eyes. I moved slowly into the room. I didn't reach for my gun, but I slid my hand in that direction. I told Danny he needed to take a minute, to calm down and take a break from what he was doing. Clack! Splish! I got around the sofa that was between us. Then I noticed Randall's head on its side by the kitchen table leg. The next moment was a blur as Danny dove for me with the knife. I pulled my gun, but it fell out of my hands as he bowled me over. The knife missed my chest in the scramble, but it burned into the side of my leg. I punched Danny hard across the face before he could lift it to do more damage. He was fast, though. His mouth was bloody as he tried to get back on top of me. I grabbed his hands as he climbed onto my chest. "Danny! Danny, damn it! It's me! Danny!" He let out a roar that didn't sound like himself. I pushed his hands into his wrists to make him drop the knife. Danny tried to bite me, but I pulled his hands apart to keep him up. I kept yelling for him to stop. Finally, I managed to roll and toss Danny into the side of the table. His head connected with Randall's, and I heard a loud crack of bone on bone. I scrambled away and grabbed my gun. When I turned, I didn't mean to shoot. I was just going to tell him to stop. but his face was bloodier than ever, and he was coming right at me. He took 2 bullets in the chest and 1 in the shoulder before he was down. He rolled onto his back and gargled just like Ann had done. I crawled over in a mess of tears. My leg hurt, and there was blood all over my pants. I looked around in the kitchen as I pulled Danny's head into my lap, and at some point, I lost consciousness. When I was coming to, I didn't want to open my eyes. It felt like I was back camping as a kid. I didn't want to be the first one awake, but no one else was going to move. Sykes was there when I woke up. I knew he would be, all black and blue, with a snake still hanging out of his face. He wasn't talking with his mouth, but I could hear him all the same. He said a lot of things to me as I lay holding my dead deputy that I loved like a son. He whistled and sang that weird little song. My head swam. He wanted me to do things, horrible things to the people who were coming. He told me about the meat packages in the freezer that were all that was left of his wife. He kept wanting me to get up. I couldn't, though. I still can't. I don't want Wendy to send help. I don't want to be found and helped. I want to die here, and whatever is in me now, to die here too. It's all I can think of as I hear helicopters in the distance. Don't let him save me. Sykes put a snake in me too. Night Wanderings is written by L. Poland, directed and produced by Silas Reynolds. This story was read for you by Silas Reynolds. Art and images by Jesse Brett Davidson. Theme and music credit to the song Anxiety, written and performed by On Deaf Ears, otherwise known as the band Chloe. All rights reserved.